The rain battered the roof of our old Victorian house in Willow Creek, Oregon, as if the sky itself was grieving. I stood in the attic, staring at a cardboard box stuffed with my life books, clothes, and a heart full of secrets I'd never dared to speak. My name is Eli Carter, and for 3 years, I'd loved someone who only had eyes for my older brother, Noah. It wasn't fair, really. Noah, with his golden hair and easy charm, had always been the sun in our small town's orbit. He was the high school quarterback, the guy who could make anyone laugh, even on their worst days. And then there was Unrequ, bookish Eli, always trailing in his shadow, scribbling poetry in notebooks I hid under my bed. But it was Julian Pierce who broke me, the boy who'd been Noah's best friend since we were kids, the one whose crooked smile made my heart stutter every time he walked through our front door. Julian was everything I wasn't: bold, reckless, with eyes like a storm over the Pacific. He'd sprawl on our couch, tossing a football to Noah, their laughter filling the house while I lingered in the kitchen, pretending to read but stealing glances at him. I'd memorized the way his dark curls fell over his forehead, the way his voice softened when he talked about his dreams of leaving Willow Creek for something bigger. But those dreams always included Noah, never me. I was just the kid brother, invisible except when Julian needed help with his English homework. That night in the attic, as I packed my things, I couldn't shake the memory of the summer before senior year. It was the night of the county fair, the air sticky with cotton candy and the buzz of cicadas. Noah had dragged Julian and me to the Ferris wheel, and when Noah ran off to charm some girl by the ring toss, Julian and I ended up alone in a creaky cart, swaying at the top as the world glittered below. I'd been so nervous I could barely breathe, my hands gripping the metal bar. But Julian just leaned back, his arm brushing mine. "You ever think about getting out of here, Eli?" he'd asked, his voice low, like he was sharing a secret. "All the time," I'd said, my heart pounding. "Somewhere nobody knows me, where I can just be." He'd looked at me then, really looked, his gray eyes catching the neon lights. For one stupid, hopeful moment, I thought he might see Minute Noah's shadow. But me. "You do good out there," he said. "You're different. Quiet, but deep." Then he'd laughed, like he was embarrassed, and the moment slipped away as the Ferris wheel lurched back to life. I'd replayed that night 1,000 times, searching for meaning in his words, his glance. But the truth was undeniable: Julian loved Noah. I'd seen it in the way he watched my brother, the way his face lit up when Noah walked into a room. It was a love so bright it burned me out, left me hollow. So, when I got accepted to a college in Boston, 3,000 miles away, I made a choice. I'd leave. I'd let Julian go. I'd stop being the ghost haunting their story. Packing was methodical, almost numbing. My books went first: Vonnegut, Whitman, the worn copy of Maurice I'd read in secret. Then my clothes, folded neatly, like I could fold away my feelings too. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving early. Not Noah, not my parents, and definitely not Julian. I'd catch a bus at dawn, slip out of Willow Creek like I'd never been here. It was easier that way. But as I taped up the last box, the attic door creaked open. Noah stood there, his silhouette framed by the dim hallway light. "Eli, what the hell are you doing?" His voice was sharp, confused, but there was something else: worry. "Packing," I said, keeping my eyes on the box. I'm leaving for Boston. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. He stepped closer, his sneakers scuffing the dusty floor. You didn't say anything. You were just gonna disappear. I shrugged, my throat tight. Figured it was time. Noah stared at me, his blue eyes searching my face like he was seeing me for the first time. This about Julian. The name hit like a punch. I froze, my hands trembling as I pressed the tape down harder than necessary. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Eli. Noah's voice softened, but it carried an edge. I've seen the way you look at him. I'm not blind. My face burned. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, but the words stuck in my throat. Noah stepped closer, his hand on my shoulder. He's my best friend. Yeah, but he's not. He doesn't feel that way about me. You know that, right? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because even if Noah was right, it didn't change the fact that Julian didn't feel that way about me either. I pulled away, grabbing another box. It doesn't matter. I'm leaving. He can have you. Or nobody. Or whatever. I'm done. Noah didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he sighed, heavy and tired. You're wrong about him, Eli. But if you're set on running, I won't stop you. He left me there, the attic swallowing the sound of his footsteps. I sat on the floor, surrounded by boxes, and let the rain drown out the ache in my chest. I told myself this was freedom. I told myself I was letting go. But deep down, I knew I was running from a truth I couldn't face. I'd never be enough for Julian Pierce. The next morning, I left before the sun rose. The bus station was a gray smudge in the fog, and as I handed my ticket to the driver, I felt a strange calm. Willow Creek faded behind me, its trees and memories blurring into the mist. I thought I'd escaped. I thought I was free. But freedom, it turns out, doesn't come that easy. Boston was louder than I'd imagined. A city that pulsed with life in a way Willow Creek never could. My dorm room at Emerson College was small, with a view of a brick wall and a roommate who played guitar at 2 a.m. But it was a fresh start. A place where nobody knew me as Noah Carter's little brother. I threw myself into my classes, into poetry workshops and late-night coffee runs, trying to outrun the ache that followed me across the country. Still, Julian haunted me. I'd see someone with his messy curls on the subway, and my heart would lurch. I'd hear a laugh like his in a crowded cafe and spin around, only to find a stranger. I hated how much I missed him, how every poem I wrote seemed to bleed his name. I'd left to forget him, but he was carved into me, a wound that wouldn't close. 6 months into my new life, I got a text from Noah. It was short, just a photo of the old oak tree in our backyard, the one Julian and I used to climb as kids. Under it, he'd written, "He's been asking about you." My stomach twisted. I didn't reply. What was there to say? Julian hadn't reached out himself. He didn't care enough to. But then, one freezing February night, my phone lit up with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something, maybe stupidity, maybe hope, made me pick up. Eli. Julian's voice was unmistakable, rough and warm, like gravel and honey. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Yeah, I managed, my voice barely a whisper. How'd you get my number? Noah. He paused, and I could hear the wind in the background, like he was outside. I heard you left. Just up and gone. Why didn't you tell me? I laughed, sharp and bitter. Why would I? You didn't need me hanging around. Julian. That's not true. His voice cracked, and for the first time, I heard something raw and it's something real. Eli, I didn't know you were leaving. I didn't know a lot of things. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. What's that supposed to mean? He was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Then he said, "Can I see you? I'm in Boston. I drove all night." I nearly dropped the phone. You're here? Yeah. I'm at some diner on Boylston Street. Please. Eli. Just talk to me. I should have said no. I should have hung up and gone back to my life, to the fragile peace I'd been building. But I was already grabbing my coat, my boots, my heart racing like it hadn't in months. The diner was a 20-minute walk, but I made it in 15, my breath fogging in the icy air. When I pushed open the door, there he was, Julian, sitting in a corner booth, his hands wrapped around a coffee mug, his eyes tired but bright when they met mine. He looked different, older somehow, like the weight of something unspoken had settled on him. Eli, he said, standing up, and the way he said my name made my chest ache. We sat, and for a while, we didn't talk. The diner hummed around us waitresses calling orders. The clink of dishes, but it was like we were in our own world. Finally, he spoke. I messed up, he said, his voice low. I didn't see you. Not really. Not until you were gone. I stared at him, my heart caught between hope and hurt. You loved Noah, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I saw it. Julian. Every day, I saw it. He flinched, his hands tightening around the mug. I thought I did, he admitted. But it wasn't what I thought. Noah's my best friend. But you, he looked up, his eyes searching mine. You were always there. Eli. Quiet, but there. And when you left, it was like the world got quieter too. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But I'd spent years building walls around my heart, and I wasn't ready to let them crumble. You don't get to say that now, I said, my voice shaking. Not after everything. I know, he said, and there was a desperation in his eyes I'd never seen before. But I'm here. Eli. I drove 3,000 miles to tell you I was wrong. To tell you I see you now. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to run, to protect the fragile life I'd built. But another part, the part that still loved him, wanted to stay, to hear him out, to believe that maybe, just maybe, he meant it. We talked until the diner closed, until the waitresses started stacking chairs and the coffee went cold. He told me about the months since I'd left, how he'd started to notice the spaces I'd left behind in the house, in his days, in his heart. He told me he'd been scared, confused, unsure of what he felt until I was gone. And I told him about Boston, about the poems I'd written, the ones I'd never show him because they were all about him. When we stepped outside, the city was quiet, snow dusting the streets. Julian reached for my hand, hesitant, like he was afraid I'd pull away. I didn't. His fingers were warm, And for the first time in years, I felt seen. But love, I was learning, wasn't that simple. It wasn't a Ferris wheel moment or a single confession. It was messy, complicated, and terrifying. And as we stood there, hand in hand, I knew this was only the beginning. Spring came to Boston, painting the city in shades of green and gold. Julian stayed. He found a job at a record store near my campus, and we fell into a rhythm coffee dates. Late-night walks along the Charles River. Moments where I could almost forget the years of longing. But the past wasn't so easy to shake. Every time he smiled at me, I wondered if he still saw Noah in the corners of his mind. We were careful with each other, like we were handling something fragile. He'd kiss me under the streetlights, soft and tentative, and I'd feel my heart crack open, letting him in despite my fear. But there were nights when doubt crept in, when I'd lie awake wondering if I was just a substitute, a second choice because Noah was out of reach. One evening, as we sat on a bench by the river, watching the water reflect the city lights, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Julian," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do you ever think about him? About Noah?" He turned to me, his face serious. "Eli, I need you to hear me. He was my best friend. My family. I thought I loved him because he was everything I was: confident, fearless. But you," he took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my skin. "You're the one who makes me feel like I'm enough. Just me." His words hit me hard, unraveling years of insecurity. I wanted to believe him, but trust was a slow climb. I spent so long thinking I was invisible. I admitted, "I don't know how to stop." "Then let me show you," he said, his voice fierce. "Every day, if you'll let me." And he did. He showed up with coffee when I was drowning in deadlines, read my poems, and argued with me about Whitman, held me when the weight of my own doubts felt too heavy. But love didn't erase the past, it just made it bearable. That summer, I went back to Willow Creek for a week, and Julian came with me. Noah was there, still the same golden boy, but different, too quieter, like he'd been carrying his own burdens. We sat in the backyard one night, the three of us, under the old oak tree. Noah looked at us, at the way Julian's hand rested on mine, and smiled a real smile, not the one he used to charm crowds. "I'm happy for you," he said, and I could tell he meant it. "You both deserve this." It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when I'd catch Julian staring off into the distance, and I'd wonder what he was thinking. There were nights when I'd wake up, heart racing, convinced he'd leave. But he stayed. And slowly, I started to believe he always would. The day I graduated, Julian was in the crowd, cheering louder than anyone. Afterward, we walked through Boston Common, the air warm with promise. He stopped under a cherry blossom tree, the same kind we'd stood under in my dreams, and pulled me close. "I love you, Eli," he said, his voice steady, certain. Not because of Noah, not because of anyone else. Just you. I looked into his eyes, those stormy gray eyes I'd loved for years. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was competing with a ghost. I kissed him, right there under the falling petals, and let myself believe in us. When we got back to Willow Creek, I found an old notebook in my attic, one I'd filled with poems about Julian. I read them to him, my voice shaking, and when I finished, he pulled me into his arms, His laughter soft against my hair. "You're a sap," he teased, but his eyes were shining. Maybe I was. But I'd spent years loving him in silence. And now, I'd spend the rest of my life loving him out loud. We weren't perfect, but we were real. And that was enough.